Michelle Cashman released the album All the Mountains I Must Climb in 2020 and has just released the new album Grace, which is an acoustic tour de force. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've had a lovely time listening to this album, which is just so captivating. So anyone who hasn't heard it yet should rush out and get it, I think. But I'm going to start way back at the beginning of your musical life.
Yes.
Because you started playing guitar at 14 and you said that once you could play 4 chords, you started writing songs. I'm wondering if you remember what those 4 chords were.
They would have been C, A minor, F, G. No, wait. I know they're not. They're G, D, E minor, and C.
Well, they're very good chords. And good for,
and they still get a good run.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I'm going to say. So what was something, once you started songwriting, what were some of those earliest songs about?
Oh, the very, very first song. Oh, it's so cliche. It was about a boy that I just freshly broken up with. And, he was cool and blonde and just like happening. And I wasn't, let's just say I wasn't grown up enough for him. And so he broke up with me and went with another girl who was a little bit more grown up. And and then so I wrote this song and I performed it in front of the whole entire school.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's still his like little claim. He's like, the first song she ever wrote was about me. I'm like, yeah. It was.
Did it have the desired impact, whatever that impact might have been?
Oh, look, the desired impact was really just me expressing myself and getting out. Like, I was extraordinarily heartbroken and I got that out into this cathartic process, which, it sort of kickstarted therapy for the rest of my life, frankly.
And obviously, showed you the power of songwriting and performing as well, because of course it's one thing to put it in a song, but you also get to express it, and not just once to him in front of the school, but over and over again if you want to.
Yeah. Yep. It's I find now even songs that I've written about 20 years ago and I people will say it's so intense when you perform and I'm like, yeah, because in that moment, those 3.5 minutes, I am right back in that headspace with all of the same feelings. And people could say that sort of like it's just dredging things up and can be harmful, but for me it's almost like when you watch the Lord of the Rings or something, and every time like you watch a movie like that, you notice something different. For me, every time I have a performance like that and sweep out those memories, it's almost like I just get a little bit extra out, and it's actually quite a healthy feeling for me.
Yeah, well, as you said, therapy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that the audience you have in front of you tends to determine how that song is performed and therefore what might come out while you're performing it?
Oh, hugely so. There is a very special magic that happens with an audience, and it can't be replicated. So the energy that's in the room and the responses there, because I try to have the lights up at least a little bit to see faces, because I see what's happening to my audience, and I have that reaction to them and they have that reaction to me, and it sort of just spirals. And there was this one particular time I sang a song that it has not been released yet at all. I still haven't figured out how I'm going to record that one either. But when I sang it, like my whole body afterwards was just shaking. And the man who owned the venue actually said, in all of the years that I have like been in radio and owning this venue and in the industry, I have never had a reaction to something like I had that reaction. And so it was like, oh, cool. It wasn't just me, like there was a thing that happened, and it was, really quite incredible.
So when you say that you're not sure how to record that particular song, is it because you're not sure how to capture that intensity of the performance you gave live?
Because you know how like a painter, you've got all these colors, and when I'm writing songs, I use genre as one way to sort of do it, in that some of my songs are more folk, some of them are more country, some of them are more pop, some of them are more rock, and rather than try and box myself, which is your kind of standard industry model that you've got to find your niche and jam yourself into it, I've kind of gone, well, that's kind of how I art my songs, you know, and I do it with the chords, the melody, and all of that kind of stuff. But then I also do it with tempo and volume, and so there ends up being this dynamic. And when you go in to record a song with a producer, often, you know, that's let's work with a click track. Everything's going to be this particular tempo, and then once you have mastering or compression and everything's now this loud, and it's sort of it took something away from it. So I've had this one actually recorded three different versions already. Right. And we've just been experimenting, trying to capture something, but I'm thinking that I may have to play with recording it live somehow, like if I'm going to put drums in and really do it with the people that are paying a lot of attention to what I'm doing and come with me on that ride.
No, I was just thinking as you were talking about it, I was like, oh, you should just record it live, and then you said it. So
yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that I can come up with, but then it's a matter of still capturing a demo version for everyone to learn it and do it the way that I kind of hear it in my head. Or I sit down and painstakingly record it all myself, bit by arduous bit, and that's still on the cards for that one.
Yeah, right. Well, if that song ever comes out, I'd be very interested to hear it.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I finally finish it. And probably that the perfectionism in me that's just going, oh my God. But yeah.
So when it comes to adding a song to your live set, the song that you've written, like the one we've just been discussing, is there a point at which you've been rehearsing it just with, you know, playing you and a guitar, and it feels like it's ready to be released to the world? Is there a certain level of emotion that you get to with that song where you think, okay, right now I can perform it without thinking about it too much, so I can let it go, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Learning it enough to be able to be in the moment with it versus thinking about it the whole time. I tend to learn on the fly, and one of the ways I discover whether or not a song is worthy of keeping is by performing live and getting that reaction and feedback. But so every song that I write, I record an acoustic version of it, and I put it on Patreon for my patrons who support my work. And the feedback from them comes, it ends up being a really, really helpful tool, because sometimes there's songs that I would just leave on the drawing room floor. It'd just be like, yeah, I wrote this song, but it was kind of like maybe just a song that it needs to get out before the next good one comes, you know? And then every now and then someone will go, no, I really like that song. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll revisit it and re-examine whether or not it's, you know, something to. So all of the songs that are on the album are favorites that my patrons have sort of voted on and said these are the ones that we can't not have on the album.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So for you working with that model, I suppose it feels a bit like you have ongoing collaborations, but you are still the creator. It's just that maybe they're just a group of editors for you.
Kind of, yeah. Kind of like a group of executive producers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did it feel strange when you first started doing that, when they were giving you feedback and you're thinking, oh, these people are trying to tell me what to do?
Oh no, because they've been really, really gentle with me. A lot of it's been the positive feedback. So it's kind of, it's the merit is that, you know, if one person says, oh, I really like that, well, that's nice. But if it's a really big group consensus that goes, oh no, we love that song. So the one that I was just talking to you about that I haven't released, everyone, whether I've like been in the patron group performing it or at a live gig, just sort of trialing it, the feedback has been unanimous. You need to do that as your next actual radio single. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right.
I will when I can work out what I want to do.
Yeah. I can do it. Yeah, but I mean that's half the reason why I've been putting out acoustic albums, because they've been voted on that they need to be released, but I still haven't quite found the full sound that I'm after,
Right.
in terms of like a radio single. So it's the acoustic versions have been what's kind of been allowed out through the gatekeepers.
Well, the way you're working with the Patreon group and to an extent with the acoustic songs is sort of a more centuries old way of being an artist, I guess. It's almost that troubadour model of wandering amongst the people and performing for whoever is in front of you. It's just in your case, whoever's in front of you is this group of subscribers, but they're an interested audience. And so it must feel very immediate dealing with that.
Yeah, and it's also because I do Facebook Lives all the time, and it's the same sort of faces pop up in those and give me their like requests and stuff. So I do these house concerts at my house, and so people who are patrons, because it's a patron only thing, they come and they sit in my living room with me, and I don't make a set list at all. It's just that I have this mega list of songs, like folder of songs, and they just, as I go around the circle, they pick the ones that they want. And yeah, and I think you're right. I'd never thought of it about the whole, really, really ancient old school model. It really is. And it feels so much better than trying to just make it in my own mind what works. And yeah, it fits better with me. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Patty Griffin in that Patty Griffin has a lot of really stripped back recordings. Like there's an album of hers where it's like around the kitchen table and things like that, and I just like, oh, it can be done like that. I'm not as freakish as I think I am.
Well, it can be done like that when you sing the way you do, I think is a big part of it. And you have this incredible instrument in your voice. And I'm wondering if you've actually had training, because you have a lot of control and great tone to it.
I never really had a lot of formal training. I did a couple of singing lessons, maybe around a term worth or half a term worth when I was about 14. And that's pretty much it. The rest is self-taught, and most of what I learned was the hard way, by losing my voice when my voice was my sole income.
Right.
And I had I think 3 months off because I couldn't sing and I couldn't pay my mortgage, and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And when you go through that, you're like, oh, I think I better do this a little bit smarter and just pay attention to how my voice is feeling. And then of course, you Google and you find some singing lesson things and you pick up things along the way. And but I think the last couple of years I've been teaching vocal students and learning so much as I'm teaching. So I'm like, I'm only three steps ahead of anyone I teach. I'm just like, I'm going to teach you what I've just learned. And but doing the exercises with my students, because I'm doing these students back to back and I'm doing these vocal exercises all the time. So my range has improved and my control has improved, my breathing has improved. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, I wish I had been doing this from the beginning. That would have probably made a bit of a difference.
Or maybe it's arrived at just the right time because you have this acoustic album.
Yeah, maybe.
So the previous album, you were releasing singles early in 2020. I actually went back and looked at the press releases I'd received around the time to look at the dates, because I was thinking you released a couple of songs right before Australia went into lockdown. But then you kept recording and releasing. So I was wondering if it was a decision of just to get this, you wanted those songs out into the world, you were determined to release them regardless, or was there something else going on that you just thought, oh, I just have to get it out?
So I had just got back into music. The end of 2019, I made the decision that I needed to get back into music. I'd had about 5 or 6 years off because I was very sick, and my health was back on track. And I just thought I really need to make a go of this because it makes me so sad not doing music. So I made that decision and I released, I went to the Country Music Academy and then I released the song as soon as I was finished, and it really went headfirst into this, I'm going to attack the world with my music. And I was so keen, you know, I was like, oh, this is my first real official single. And I did a film clip, and it was played on CMC just before, like it only just got in there before they stopped. And I was so like pumped and excited, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, but I'd already just launched Patreon.
Right.
And because I knew, having had my health condition, I wasn't going to be able to just go like a bull at a gate and do gigs back to back. And I thought I need a different model for me so that so it's sustainable and I don't burn myself out. I say that and right at the moment feeling terribly burnt out. But when I had these patrons, it's like, well, you guys are paying me to do this. And that is to write music, record music, and release music. And so there's this obligation that regardless of a pandemic, if I've got access to recording things and I can do this remotely, well, then I will just still keep on keeping on. And, you know, in months where I've had other things happen, my house has flooded twice in the last 12 months. So there's like there's been lots of things, and there's been times where I'm like, oh, I probably need to get myself another job and do something that's more financially helpful. But it's like, these people have already paid me for this month. I've got to do what they've paid me to do, which is write songs. So I'm kind of employed as a songwriter already. So it's kind of a part-time job when the numbers crunch, but you know, I'm still building that, and hopefully it is a scalable model, which is the main thing, that, you know, if I just keep at it and I just keep chipping away and doing what I'm doing, it is growing, even if it's slowly, that it is working and it is growing. And that's all I can ask for.
Well, and I keep going back to that idea of it being a really old way of doing things, because I work in book publishing by day, and I'm very fond of saying that the very first storytellers were oral. So people who write books and they're like, I don't want to have to talk about it. It's like, well, your job several centuries ago was only spoken. There was no way to print this and get it out to people. So I think, yeah, what you're doing is connects to that instinctual nature of humans to want stories told to them. And in this case, you do have this dedicated group. So I'm wondering if it's changed your idea of what your job is in a way. Like, do you now see yourself more as a storyteller, say, rather than a musician or just or
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I've kind of always identified with that storyteller vibe, but not really had the same sort of platform to do it, because, you know, you go to a gig and people have come to a gig and it was different then. Whereas now it's sort of, I do these Facebook lives and I'm talking to people and I'm sharing the stories behind my songs, and getting very used to having to tell the stories behind the songs, because I know that it matters to people. And it's been challenging, because I was initially quite camera shy. When I first started doing music, I did Australian Idol back in 2002 or something ridiculous. Oh, wow. And one of the comments when I finally had my thing in front of the judges and national television, one of the judges roasted me and said, you know, why we've seen you improve every time. Why did you didn't improve this time? You went backwards. Like, what happened? And I'm like, there are cameras in my face. And every other time that I've done this, that it's just been to an audience, and now there's cameras in my face. And I think it was Mark Holden said, you know, well, you've just said it yourself. You don't belong here. And Marsha Hines turned around and said, you know, that's enough. Like, no, they train you for that. Don't. And when I went away, I was just like, you know what? Who's they? Who's they that train you? Like, because nobody's like doing this, no one's investing in this. And so I ended up going and doing camera training. I went and put myself through like a acting school to get comfortable in front of a camera. And then, you know, I had another decade pass or whatever. And then when all these social media, Facebook lives and stuff, at first when I was doing it, I was like, oh, this is just horrific just keep going, just keep going. And it's the classic thing with me that there is some form of technology issue every time. Like I drop something, or I trip over something. There's always something, but people love it. It's like this is Michelle. You get the very real version of me. And I'm just glad that I can laugh at myself, because that's part and parcel with what I do, is just I'm just gonna laugh at myself or you'd cry.
Well, and I do think people like the real life aspect as opposed to the very polished Instagram version of things we get sometimes, because it means that, they can communicate with you and you can communicate with them. I think relatability is significant in this era of social media.
And I think it's so important. Like, we were saying before about how do I find that it adds to what I'm doing, and do I see myself, my job is different? I feel like my job is about community. Like it's really, when I log on and I'm live with these people, sometimes I haven't even met them in person, but I feel like I know them, because every time their name pops up in the comments with their little profile picture, I'm learning more about them, because they tell me their stuff as well. They tell me what resonates with their songs. And so I start to get to know their personalities, and they start to get to know each other, which has been a really special thing. Watch unfold, they talk to each other, and it's extraordinarily special. And there's a bond there that I was very surprised by, but very delighted to see. And there's people that are lonely in the world, and that music really is a balm for the soul. And then you add community to that, and understanding and acceptance, and all of a sudden you've just got this really healing thing that happens, and it's magical.
Well, and as you said, out of that community came the choice of songs on the new album, because they were all songs that your Patreon community had said must go on this album. And so we should talk a bit more about that album. Now, you worked with producer Michael Carpenter. What do you like about working with him?
He's just a beautiful human. He's gentle with me, but he will tell me if he needs to tell me, if that makes sense. So, I trust him, and, I don't feel, because if I've got a camera in my face, I can get nervous, because it's not just that camera. It's also the person behind that camera. And so I've got to be comfortable to perform to that camera without necessarily worrying about who's behind it. And when Michael's in the room, I'm quite comfortable around him. I have built a rapport with him over the years, and he's a kind soul, and I respond to that by being able to just show up more fully. And it's the relationship, I think, that keeps me working with him, because it's special.
Now, the opening track for Grace, the album, is called Where is Grace? And I'm wondering, where do you find Grace, or where have you found it in the past?
So I wrote this song initially about a friend of mine who was going through a really tough time. And I was watching people around her in the community sort of turn their back on her and talk about her behind her back. And, like when someone's, when we're behaving badly, we're not very easy to love. And, I was just watching that and just thinking the thing that got me through my hardest moments were the people around me who loved me in spite of my unlovability, so it's that grace that was extended to me that, and I had teachers in high school who looked at me like I was worth more than I thought that I was worth. And it was reading those little facial expressions and those micro moments in life that were life-changing. People who treated me like I deserved to be treated well when I was acting abominably. I can't believe I even said that word.
As we all do. Like, this is the thing. Everyone does from time to time. We all have our moments.
Yeah. And I think how you treat someone when they're at their worst can be the very thing that gets them to the other side of that. And you just don't know the impact that these little moments can have on someone.
Yeah. And I suppose now you're also involved in creating those moments, because music, as we've already talked about, can be that balm for people who are feeling lonely. And it can be where a lot of people find their moments of grace in life. So that's a really sacred responsibility, I think.
Yeah, it's huge. And I'm always really conscious that when I meet someone at a show that, you know, I don't know their story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they need, but I can always offer them kindness. And just that, you know, just that little moment after the show where they come and talk to me, I take great care in how I approach those moments, because I just think they can make such a huge difference.
I think listening to the album for the listener is a really joyous experience, because there's a lot of richness in it and it's quite emotional. And you talked earlier about, you know, when you're performing songs live and the things that will come out for a song that you might have performed over and over again. But I'm wondering, when you're recording those songs and doing several takes in a studio, what it's like trying to access that emotion each time, or does it come each time?
You know what? It's actually hard for me to not bring the emotion. I've been told before, like if I'm rehearsing or something, you don't have to bring it at 100%. If it's just a rehearsal, like just, you know, run through it. Don't give it all your energy. And I'm like, I can't do that. It takes more energy for me to hold that back, because it's just how I do things. And if I kind of numb out during that, I don't know, it kind of feels dirty. It's kind of music is, it's very similar to intimate relations in that way. You know, you show up or you don't show up.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. I'm also thinking, you know, part of the job of the storyteller, I guess, is to let the stories go so that the audience can form their own relationship with them. So as much as they're things that you're still holding closely to you, that you're still deriving emotion from, do you have that sense of letting them go and letting the audience do whatever they want with them, interpret them however they want?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there's some of the songs that I've written, I have deliberately left a bit of ambiguity in them. There's one song that I've written that's a patron-only song, where I'm talking from the perspective of both. One story is that it's a lover that is in the house alone and missing that person who's gone, but it's also someone who's being talked to by someone who loves them, who's passed on. Right. So and I had these two stories simultaneously existing inside of me while I wrote the song. And so it's sort of like, it could be from a parent, it could be from a lover, it could be from a mum to a child, or a child to a mum, or any of those things. But at the same time, it's still quite pointed, and it feels like this is exactly what that story is, but it's actually more than one story.
So now that you've released these songs on Grace, it sounds like there are plenty of other songs sitting there that you may wish to record. So are you making plans for another album already?
Yes, there's many. So there's currently, I think, 80 unreleased songs in the Patreon folder. And yeah, they're continuously coming. I'm writing all the time. So it's just sifting through them and getting them recorded. Yeah. So there'll be at least an acoustic album a year.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very exciting for your fans. And I'm imagining also for your fans, they'll be able to see you on the road at some point. Are you heading to Tamworth at all next year? What plans do you have for shows?
I am. I'm heading to Tamworth in January. I have one show at the Press, and I'm definitely doing that. I'm really, really excited. I've applied for like the fan zone and stuff like that, but I haven't got dates for those or anything like that. But it'll all be on my website, michellcashman.com. Right. And I've got a couple of shows coming up this week. I've got an album launch in Milton, New South Wales, on Thursday, and then I'm in Mittagong Friday, and then Sydney the following Wednesday. So there's a bit in the pipeline, but I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm sure your fans will love seeing you live in person, just as they've enjoyed hearing these songs, or will enjoy hearing them if they're not fans yet. Michelle, it's been so lovely to talk to you and so interesting. I could keep talking for hours, but I'll save it for the next time. So thanks for talking to me.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.